Tim, did you get pushback? Because one of the things I've seen doing these accident investigation board reports is the culture has kind of shifted. We've seen more mishaps because we've allowed ourselves to get away from that mentality, and there's just not the capacity. The training capacity doesn't exist to get people excess rides, and if they don't have to, they're like, push it on. I did one mishap board report where the kid had never refueled until he was at his operational squadron. They put him in a night surface suppression of enemy air defense, and then he came back and he beat himself up, and he just couldn't land, and then the ejection seat failed at the very last thing. And that was horrible because they set this kid up for failure.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you seen this kind of trend on your side as well of, this we're lowering standards because we can't produce what we used to be able to produce?
So that was an F-16 guy that came back, wasn't it, young boy, that you're talking about? I read that report. That was awful. I took that one apart. We did a lot of that in the school about that. We trace it back, break the chain. James Reedon's models of break chain. Yeah, I saw the one you did briefly of the B1 as well. Was it the B1 that came in?
B1
that
where the ops group commander just got fired.
And the guy wrote that in a state of anger, didn't he? Like, I'm gonna write a report. First off, I'm gonna have like 7 bottles of bourbon, and then I'm just gonna fucking type angrily. And they're all dicks. They're all dicks. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, fuck. That's I've read reports like that before, but historically, I think when we look at it, they're making their bed and they're lying it. We can see it's coming from miles off, right? And I was arguing against this forever. In fact, right now they're asking me to go back and fly at the age of 50. I know I look like I'm 27. They're gonna put me back in this airplane here to go and teach again at 50. I'm like, they wrote to me, in fact, the reason, this is pertinent, just a little segue. They said, come back and fly. I said, what are the terms? The same as what you left on. I said, I left those for a reason, because they weren't very good. You know what I mean? Why would I come back now? Because they sucked in the first place. Come back 5 years later. So they don't learn. And the thing about the Air Force, of course, is they don't have to learn, because they're all going to get a pension, as I was. I haven't got to change anything. You get these mavericks. You need mavericks in the service, by the way. You need the guys that are going to just flash up and just do something like, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to speak to people nicely and see what happens. Or I'm going to change something on the squadron and have a barbecue on a Thursday and let the women come in and the dogs come in and we're going to have a great time. But we're going to miss 2 hours flying. Yeah, but everyone feels great and they feel valued. Yeah, but we're going to miss the program. But we feel fucking valued. So you need people like that. And if you don't have those people, then people leave and they don't come back and everything else. So if you look at the Red Arrows, they're a classic case in point. I did an investigation into the Red Arrows back in 2011 into a friend of mine who was killed called John Eggin. He lived with my brother at university, lovely bloke, and I just walked up Mount Snowdon with him a couple of weeks before. In fact, the test they do in the Red Arrows, when you go to Cyprus for the Reds, they put you in the jet, they fly you. They used to get you smashed up drunk, like, see how you're going to perform. It's so old school and British. You got to do it at both ends. You got to be able to go out in Limassol and go, hey, ladies, lager, and get in the jet the next day and fly. And that actually got blown apart about a year ago. Someone kind of went, I think this might be a bit unprofessional. Are we allowed to? We better stop this shit.
Send it. Exactly. Yeah, YouTube will let us know.
So yeah, exactly. Thank you. So it's so they did that anyway. John, before they do the barrel roll and the loop, and he came. I flew with John. I flew his aerobatics with him, so I knew John quite well. And he went into the team, and I think it was his second year, and he broke at Bournemouth, the last display of the season. His wife was on the ground as well. So at the seafront, luckily, when he broke at the airfield, he became unconscious. It was actually P-lock or A-lock, which is an American term, not G-lock that we all know. So it's a partial loss of consciousness. And he impacted the ground with a slight recovery beforehand, impacted the ground. So that was 2011. Now, before that, they'd had 2 aircraft hit each other in the Red Arrows. Michael Ling ejected. Dave Montenegro became the boss. They hit each other because they hadn't called the points at the right time. Then they had 7 weeks after John was killed, I was at Scampton doing the service inquiry. I was supposed to fly that morning in Red One's aircraft to do the evaluation on the ADR, accident data recorder, and the data acquisition unit to make sure what you saw on the CSI, your combined speed indicator, trying to translate this into civilian stuff, what you saw in your speedo was the same as what was going into the black box of the aircraft when it was measured, to make sure the speed. But that morning it was too foggy, so a guy called Sean Cunningham, good dude, just an absolute player with the ladies, real lad, right? He came up and said, Tim, you're not gonna be able to fly, the weather's too bad. I'll take the jet over with another couple of guys to Valley. We do some sorties over there, and I'll go and have lunch with your wife. That's how much of a player he was, you know what I mean? And Red 5, he crewed into the jet. And on crewing in on the control check, he had a control restriction. And as he forced through the control restriction, the seat fired him through. And the seat had been over-tightened on the Martin Baker seat. The scissor shackle had been over-tightened against SAPs. And the drogue came out, but the main chute didn't deploy, and he impacted the ground and was killed. And that was on the morning. That was 7 weeks later in the Red Arrows. Wow. So Now, as a service inquiry, so now as a service inquiry team investigating one fatality on the Red Arrows, we're now witnessing the second, which never happened before. So everyone we'd told, all the witnesses for the first one that we'd interviewed, saying, no, it just stays with this. And all of a sudden now, because we could be interviewed by the police, who are actually very good about it because they didn't know what the hell was going on, we could then potentially release all the information for a second service. It was really ugly. The whole thing was ugly. So we left them. So that was the other one. And then a few years later, a friend of mine, Dave Stark, was flying a PFL profile in the Red Arrows again. He was a brand new on the team. Currencies were messed up. Like PFL currency, they could do several different PFL currencies. Engine failure after takeoff, turnbacks. They could do a normal PFL. And on squadrons, we'd list them as like 3 separate events. But on the Reds, they just say PFL. And no one would know what PFL was. They would just say PFL. So he was trying something that was never going to be valid. Like the parameter was way off. From the moment he closed the throttle and turned downwind, never getting back to the airfield. Like it's never going to happen. Like you could see it. You're like, yeah, you're not even at circuit height, dude. How the fuck's this? You know what I mean? It's never gonna happen. But he was very new. The Reds kind of were trying to get his currencies up by sending him off to do them, and he had an engineer in the back. So an engineer from the Blues, who of course he's as a Pax, this dude. You know what I mean? There's no command eject. Well, there's a command eject in the Hawk, but rear to front. This guy's flying in the back. There's no front to back. Reds pilots flying the front, and then he messed up the PFL, stalled the jet on final. And very close, about 300 foot to the ground, which should have been survivable. There's no, on the Hawk T1, there's no stall warner, no ground proximity warning system, no TCAS, no rad out, nothing. Just old school, you know, man's airplane,
like
right?
T-38, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Except we put a wing on ours. We had a wing on the Hawk. Though. We put a wing. So,
of course. What's
you
that
guys,
like? Yeah.
you went, we're going to starfighter this shit. We're going to starfighter it right up. Bang, there we go. And let's use that as a trainer because that's going to be ideal to put guys onto high aspect aircraft or high, you know, like the F-35.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to use it. We're going to still use it today because the T7, well, we're not really going to bring that in because it's a bit complex. I don't know what you guys, we could talk about T7 in a minute. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect.
We're doing that. We're probably going to buy that off you as well. Like, what's it going to do? Put twin tails on it. We're going to do it high speed. No one needs that stuff. No one needs it, but let's make it anyway. So apart from that, yeah, keep that T-38. I know guys training on the T-38, they're phoning me up going, yeah, it's a little bit kind of old school. It's like, fuck yeah, it is. 1960, like, you know, when birds were learning to fly, you built the T-38. So apart from that, anyway, so they killed. So he killed the engineer on ejection. The engineer hit the ground, unfortunately, stayed in the aircraft and burnt to death. So, but Dave did swing once in a parachute, impact the runway. So that was it. And then they started major investigations into the Reds. So the Reds are the most unsafe display team in the world still. And you can look through the history on that. That's one of those things. And it kind of, coming back to your initial question, that's the mentality that was allowed to foster. We had a whole world of investigation into that, how they were treating women, everything else. It was pretty crazy, pretty, like everyone in the Air Force knew this was happening in the team. And the seniors still allowed that to kind of carry on. You still allowed it to manifest itself. You know what I mean? That was a problem. So I think with accidents, we're not seeing necessarily. I don't think we're seeing. I don't think we have the rate of flying that you have. For example, on this airplane here, it's got like 5 movements a day now. Yet when I was on it, it had like 40 or 50. So I think the only thing missing at the moment, because the engine issues and stuff like this, is the volume. When we start seeing volume, yeah. I think we're probably going to see that. And the other thing with the Air Force that you have to remember is when they took a survey, I think it was last year, only 18%, that's 18% of the Air Force had any confidence in the leadership. Now, the leadership has since changed, but you got 18% confidence in the leadership. I'd never seen that before. You know, that to me was, yeah, that's pretty awful.
Wow.
Well, I mean, you probably remember, I mean, I remember in 2008 to 2012 flying the F-16 when we would have these briefs and they'd be like, yeah, this country's flying, 69 hours a year. And we'd all laugh like, oh, those guys suck. They're going to be terrible. And now you look at how many hours.
Here we are.
Especially when you look at a mishap report, you're looking at the 30, 60, 90, and you're looking at the look back and you're like, these dudes aren't flying. These guys, they're showing up. And how do you replace that? Are they also looking at replacing real flying with simulator flying there? And how do you feel about, reducing actual cockpit time?
Yeah, it's the next big thing. So Red 6, that company that do that VR, was it augmented stuff, isn't it? They've gone up to the Hawk T2. The Hawk T2's got issues with the engine, obviously, from the 951 Adore, so the compressor issue. And of course, we're never going to get that. It's a failure. So let's say what it is now, because I'm going to jail anyway, right? You know what I'm saying? But we're going to jail. No, we're going to jail. So the UKM FTS with the Hawk up at Valley, the fast jet flying training pipeline is fundamentally broken. This is why we're putting guys out in Italy right now, and we're sending guys across to NGEPs as well on the T38. We've got instructors out there, and we've also got students out there at the moment on NGEPs. But these people don't have capacity. When I was in there, we knew things were happening, and I was trying to find capacity around the world, phoning up, hello Argentina, have you got capacity to train some British students? Have you? Well, let's have a think about that, shall we? But so I was trying to find capacity. Now, the thing about flight schools, if you're running a flight school properly, of course, you're not running it with some spare capacity. Everything's leaned right down because that's how we save costs. So no one really had capacity. So we do struggle to find places to put these guys through. So yeah, I mean, there's issues all around. I think with the augmented reality, that's not the solution. The power that thing needs cannot be contained in this airplane. So when you're beaming things on headsets outside the airplane, it takes a lot of power. And I think the recent trial on this, I don't think they could actually fully support it in the airplane, because you've got to put this power unit somewhere. So that's some development work that needs to be done. Personally, I'll tell you what, I'm not just saying it now, but my school is a very good, cheap, low-cost answer for getting guys through. The workflows, everything else, getting people into just checks and prioritization, airmanship, captaincy, all the stuff that we know and love. And on bloody DCS, it's free, for crying out loud. So, but the Air Force doesn't seem to want to embrace this either. I think the Air Force worries about guys sitting in a Hornet and getting switchology for the Hornet and then jumping into T2 for real and actually messing that switchology up. And I know to us, it's like, well, of course you're not going to, but it is a valid concern. So it hasn't fully worked out yet, the Air Force, how to embrace, I think, new technologies. The Air Force will always lag. I used to have a go at the Air Force, but I realized that one of the strengths of the Air Force is its conservatism. If that makes sense. Because if it changes everything all the time, then you're just going to fuck shit up quickly. So it needs to develop and go through processes and stages. And as much as I love Mavericks, and a lot of the best students I had were these Maverick characters, which you needed to sort of contain. But when you let them out of the box onto the front line, they did amazing things, and they solved a huge world of problems. You do need to kind of contain them. You do need to control them, because they wouldn't control themselves. So they are looking at alternative solutions. I just think at the moment, it just takes time for those things to go through. And of course, one of the things and I don't want to keep talking here, even though I am your guest. All right.
That's the point. Yeah. That's
Keep
why we're
going.
here.
Yeah,
that's how this works.
Exactly. Yeah. I say that on news programs sometimes when the newscaster is having a go at the guest. I'm like, hang on. I go on like some of these programs in this, and sometimes people have a go at me. I'm like, can I be the guest for a second? And can I answer the question you just asked me? You know what I mean? Can I just, but then they shut me off and they don't like me anymore. I don't really do many of those now. But like with drone proliferation and things like that, we never really saw that coming in Ukraine. You've got battlefield tanks, haven't you, been taken out by small drones made by a Chinese kid in a sweat factory. I mean, it's just that kind of stuff. And I think we are needing to rapidly, I'll tell you what the Air Force is good at. I like this. I'm starting skateboarding this year, by the way. Age of 50, #hero. I know what you're thinking. Yes, I am going to be awesome.
Your knee's going to look like Gonky's.
It's the ankles, apparently. 50-odd ankles, you know what I mean? Apparently, we have to stretch now when we do sports and stuff. So I'm going to be skateboarding. I'll be at the skate park with my helmet on, my elbow pads. But, trying to embrace this new technology. But the Air Force have got gamers. They've got a gaming league. So these guys come together, kids, it's just long hair and stuff. They sit there and they do gaming. And then I think they use that kind of experience of gaming to feed back into whatever the Air Force is supposed to be developing. Our Air Force is not very good. It doesn't really have it has operational evaluation units for the aircraft. So the F-35 has an OEU, an operational evaluation unit. We'll take the F-35 in, we'll evaluate it, we'll look at tactics and procedures. It doesn't really have anything. It says it does. It doesn't really work for wildcards coming in and saying, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did this? Like, this is a video game. Like, Tim's using a video game. Like, Tim is teaching 200 people to do F-18 boat work. Like, I know what I'm talking about, but that's at the back end. That's at the back end of the course. I'm like, by the way, now we've learned the syllabus for all the Air Force stuff. Let's go to the boat, like that. And everyone's like, what the fuck's going on? So it's
not
quite
that hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, just do this and this, and then just hit the deck and things happen, right?
That's right. Hook down.
Like,
questions.
I met a couple of guys that did it before. They didn't seem that clever. It's going to be all right. You know what I mean? It'll be fine. So, but they do that. So, and then we teach that. But I'm just doing it on a video game. And the guys are turning up with their virtual reality headsets. So if I'm doing that, that should be someone in the Air Force should be leaning into this a little bit and going, how do we leverage this low cost application? And just the Italians use it, the French Air Force use it. I think there's other people that use it out there. And I know that Mover doesn't like it, right? So don't tell him about it because he doesn't like it. He slags it right off the whole
Where do
time.
these things
He's like,
come from?
DCS sucks. I hate DCS. Because
Tim, he's the
Oh,
closet DCS player. That's why he
boy.
just
I
throttles
bet
me
he
every
is.
time. Every time we fight, like
No,
Mooger just
Gonky, it's
throttles me.
because I'm superior.
Well,
The tactics, it does DCS. The tactics remain the same, sir.
It's all the training, dude. I don't
I'm
train.
just, I'm
I
just
show up.
saying.